Okay, we'll jump into our first question from Alex on oxalates. Rob, what is your perspective on oxalates? Is there any merit to what people like Dr. William Shaw, Sally Norton, and Elliot Overton say about the evils of oxalates? Or can we all keep eating spinach and almonds? Could this be the explanation as to why some people who go full carnivore benefit from eliminating all greens?
So maybe the easiest thing to answer there is the last point. Yeah, this is almost certainly one of the reasons why folks that go full carnivore finally address that niggling underlying issue that keto and paleo, although benefiting sometimes to some degree, doesn't fully resolve. And it's interesting. You could make the case that we should be able to handle oxalates just fine. And when you look at some of the gut microbiota of the Hadza, for example, they have oxalate metabolizing bacteria. And then there's also issues around adequate calcium intake can mitigate some of the deleterious effects of oxalate, basically keeping it sequestered in the feces and it moves out instead of getting moved in. But there is also a reality that we should have bacteria that can help us deal with oxalates. Generally in westernized populations, we don't. And this is some of the conundrum that I think we face at large is for whatever reason, the way that our westernized diet is altering the gut microbiota, we are losing the ability to deal with more and more foods. And to some degree, like keto, low carb, zero carb, carnivore is kind of like the last spot that people end up that they can still deal with things. And it seems like fruit to some degree is less of a problem. Some things like white rice or different starchy components maybe for different people are less problematic. Mushrooms may be less problematic. But a lot of these things that are historically thought of as being like health foods and superfoods, like spinach and kale and all that stuff, they really cause a lot of problems for some people. So, and it's interesting, again, when we think about this from like the evidence-based nutrition folks and the it fits your macros folks or what have you, we really should be able to deal with this stuff better than what we do. Nobody, as far as I can tell right now, is entirely clear about how we can restore the gut microbiota. I was at the evolutionary medicine conference that Kiel Polynesemi puts on each year, and Erica Sonnenberg from the Sonnenberg lab at Stanford was there, and we were talking about this stuff. And there's kind of a reality that when you look at the gut microbiota over generations, and they've done this in mice, and we've also seen this in humans, it's getting more and more narrow as time goes on, which is not good. It's a multi-generational problem. And there's kind of, this is the point that I wanted to make about the it fits your macros folks and some of the evidence-based medicine or evidence-based nutrition folks, is that it appears that any inclusion of westernized foods begins and accelerates the loss of gut microbiotic diversity. So this whole notion that you can have a little bit here and there, maybe a fucking lie, or it may be completely misinformed, ill-informed, if we're thinking about the gut microbiota as kind of like this extra genomic information processing center, where we've got more genetic diversity in our gut than we have in the totality of humanity. And that stuff is being lost over time. And there's a case to be made that no amount of westernized foods are really safe in this regard. So this is, I don't know, I'm not stating this as fact. I'm stating this as a little bit of a hypothesis. But if the hypothesis is true that the inclusion of virtually any amount of westernized foods starts moving us in a direction of a more curtailed gut microbiota, then what the fuck are we going to do about that? And how are people going to modify their recommendations according to that information? And again, the information that comes out of the Sonnenberg lab is very interesting in this regard. And there's definitely a lot of people that, myself included, like somebody held my feet to the fire about all the almonds I was eating, and fucking lo and behold, man, like I think some of the final, kind of gut related stuff that I had was from eating these nuts, and I've tinkered with like soaking and sprouting and getting the ghost of Western A. Price to lay hands on my sprouted fucking stuff, and it's better, but it's not great. Like I do better without them, and so I'm kind of in this mode of carnivore plus coffee and fermented food is kind of where I'm at, and doing really well with that. Like I feel really good, my digestion is good. But it's interesting. I've shifted to a more curtailed, less diverse food intake, but I feel better. But then there's an argument to be made that I'm probably tuning my gut microbiota to a more narrow frequency band. But I'm just stuck at this point. I don't know what else to do. I've done like every probiotic, prebiotic. I won't name any of them because I don't want to throw them under the bus. Because they didn't work for me doesn't mean they won't work for someone else. But it's a really interesting and complex topic, and I know I'm getting totally out in the weeds here, but on the one hand, I think that we have people maybe in the ancestral health scene, some people that sell a degree of knowledge on this topic that is bullshit. Like they can claim, this kind of magic divination that, oh, if you have this profile, then you need to do X, Y, Z, and I think that that's horseshit. But then on the flip side, I think that the evidence-based nutrition folks are dismissive of this topic to the point of like eventual like legal ramifications or something. It's just moral ramifications, if nothing else. Like they too approach this story with this remarkable degree of certitude when it's a brand new topic. There's so much more that we don't know than what we do know, and I think at the end of the day, the most important thing that folks can do is have kind of a rubric for, if you are sick, what is a way that we can get you healthy? And then we start, trying to iterate and move from there. So that was a short question with a very, 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 very long answer.